Well, hello, friends and fans. Yes, this is, but no, it's not. Yes, this is indeed Mainstreet with Gary Allen, but obviously, if you've watched this show before or you're a fan of Gary's, you know that this is not Gary Allen. My name is Geoffrey Mark. I am a good buddy of Gary's. Gary has some ouchies he's dealing with, so this week and next week, I will be your guest host. I am, for those of you who remember what I'm talking about, I am the Robert Q. Lewis of the 21st century. I'm the guy people go to fill in when they can't be there and they want their show to be good, but not so good that I'm a threat to them. So I'm that guy, one down. So here we are today. Our guests today, should they show up and should technology work, our comedian Earl Skakel. I've known Earl, golly, about 20 years. As far as comedians go, he is one of the freshest, most inventive comedians I've seen in a very long time. I guess I've been spoiled growing up as a baby boomer and seeing, and then being in the business for so many years, getting to know the incredible talents of people like Jack Carter and Shelley Berman and folks like that. And when I go to laugh today at younger people, I find that they sometimes have good jokes or they might have a funny attitude, but they don't have a persona. They don't have something that as soon as they walk out, you're laughing at them. And Earl did this for himself, and I'm a great admirer of his. If he can get through. The second half of this show is Shawn Michaels. Shawn is an incredible man. He is an adult film star and producer, and he produces other things as well. He fights ageism. He fights sexism. He fights discrimination. He's an advocate. He's an activist, and I respect him. So those are my first two guests. And if it seems like I'm stalling, it is, well, first of all, I'm having a bad hair day. So all of you out there who have hair, my hair is not cooperating today, and I'm a little ticked off at it. My hair worked great for the last 48 hours. I was in Los Angeles having meetings. My hair cooperated, but not today. I will tell you that you're not going to care how I look when you see Earl Skakel. Because Earl, besides being brilliant and funny, is ridiculously handsome. And I feel very insecure when he's around. So the powers that be, meaning Tom Bannis, our producer, is telling me that Earl's ready to go, but that the technology's maybe a little unsteady. So we're going to give it a go. We're going to bring Earl in just a second here. And if it doesn't work out, you lucky people, you either get an incredibly handsome comedian or you get this guy and I'll sing a song for you until we can fix it. So if everybody's ready, if you're ready at home, if you're ready at all the different platforms, if Earl is ready, if Tom is ready, let me say hello to my friend and one of the most brilliant comics I know, Earl Skakel.
Hello, Geoffrey.
There he is. How are you, my friend?
This is the first time StreamYard has ever worked for me. So it's all on me, the bad technology, but it's good to see you.
But StreamYard knows that you are such a macho, masculine, muscular force of life that it's afraid of you and it's working.
I'm amazed it's working. I've probably tried to do these interviews on StreamYard maybe 10 times. This is the first time I've ever got it to work. So you're a good luck charm.
Well, you're a good luck charm for me as well. So I don't know if you got to hear all the lovely things I said about you before I introduced you. But to give our audience a little history, Bud Friedman is a friend of mine, and he was the owner of all the improvisation clubs all over the country. And we were having dinner one night, and he said, Jeff, go to the Improv. He gave me a night. Check out Earl Skakel. I want you to tell me what you think of him. And this is like 20 years ago. And you came out, and It's a thing among comedians and people in comedy. It's hard to make us laugh out loud. We watch somebody funny and go, yeah, that's funny. And, no laughter. You came out in 10 seconds. I was laughing out loud and kind of holding my ribs in. And I felt that way for your entire set because you're an original. I don't know anybody else who works the way you do. Your comedy lines are hysterical. You say very funny things. You say things funny, and you've invented this wonderful onstage character for yourself. So now that your ego is overblown, how did you come about finding this character for yourself?
Well, I grew up, I'm 52, so I didn't grow up with traditional stand-ups as my mentors or idols. I grew up with like Archie Bunker, the great Carol O'Connor,
For your health.
Foster Brooks, and television shows. I'm going to mention a few obscure ones that some people might not be aware of, but probably one of the first entrances into comedy for me was the TV show The White Shadow.
Oh, sure.
Which was a groundbreaking show for the time. Kids today would probably find it boring, but it was this show about a white coach coaching in the ghetto, and Gwyneth Paltrow's dad was the creator, and it covered a lot of sensitive subjects. One of the first episodes I remember was there was a gay player from another high school, and he got outed at his high school. So he went to the Carver High, which was the fictional high school they used, thinking, oh, no one's going to know I'm gay here. And then one day they go to play pickup basketball, and a bunch of guys from his old high school are playing. So they start calling him homophobic slurs. And it was like, this was on CBS on a Monday night. And the way they interwove humor into subjects like that, they covered abortion, rape, stuff that high school age kids go through, but in a funny way. I think in the back of my mind, I was like, I want to do comedy like that, where you're talking about sensitive subjects, but you can still make people laugh. And, obviously All in the Family was like that. The Jeffersons,
all the Norman Lear shows.
Yeah, no, it's funny. They really are. And even shows like Good Times, which was a very funny but sensitive show as well. And then I never got into like the Cosby Show or stuff like that. Silly humor like Seinfeld. I liked, in my comedy now, try and talk about sensitive subjects, but appear likable, which is tough. I have a joke about the Miami condo situation that, where it collapsed. And I do a joke about, they sent in the Israeli search team, and within 20 minutes, they found all the loose change. Sensitive.
Joan Rivers would be kissing your feet for that kind of a joke.
I mean, it's an awful situation, but I just heard that they actually did send in the Israeli search team because they're used to buildings falling down a lot in that part of the world. That joke just came to my head, and I've done jokes about 9/11, and obviously nothing funny about that, but I do jokes about my parents dying 2 months apart, and the guy trying to sell me coffins like they're a car. So I don't do a lot of knock jokes. And,
no, not at all. No, all of your humor that I've seen through the years is intellectual, but wrapped in zany. It's thoughtful, but it's deadly funny. And then there you are, this great big strapping guy, dressed sometimes in outrageous costumes. And I don't know anybody who could dress the way you do on stage and not be self-conscious and still be funny and, forgive me to embarrass you, and be sexy at the same time.
I mean, it's I got that part of my act in terms of the leather pants and the leather jackets and the custom fitted clothes, really from the 80s, rock bands that I used to watch and still do. Probably the only guy still watching 80s metal in 2021. But I think Stephen Pearcy, the singer from Rat, very popular band from LA, he said, "I'm into fashion music." And I was like, well, I want to be into fashion comedy. So yeah, it's a fine line. You don't want the outfit to be so distracting that no one listens to you, which some comics have. There was a comic from the 80s by the name of Rick Rockwell. Uh, he was a pretty funny guy, but he came on stage in these outrageously colored and printed shirts, and no one listened to him. They were just like fixated on his shirts and his bright yellow pants. So I try and find a happy medium, and I think after 20 years, I've stumbled upon my perfect combination.
But I've seen you. You've come out on stage to do a set in a professional hockey uniform.
Yeah,
You've come out. You've come out. I think in a singlet, a wrestler's singlet. You've come out in professional wrestler's outfit where you're hardly wearing anything. And I don't want to embarrass you, but folks, you can't tell from where he's sitting. The man goes to the gym. He is nicely built. If he were a singer, teenage girls would be going, oh, because of the way he's built and his looks. You managed to do something. It's almost impossible for women. The only one I can think of is Lucille Ball, where a woman is, or Fran Drescher, beautiful and really funny. You are sexy and really funny, which is very hard for a man to pull off. Usually the funny completely obliterates the sexy, or the sexy dampens the funny, but you do them both really well.
well, thank you. I wish you were my manager.
I've offered, kiddo.
I mean, I think I'm like a combination of David Lee Roth meets, uh, Don Rickles, and you probably wouldn't put those two in the same sentence many times, but you know, I don't think too many people leave one of my stand-up shows going, "What was that joke about?" I call it smart, dumb humor. I don't do a lot of head scratchers where you go, I have to think about that. But then I also try and perform it. I always tell people I'm more of a performer than a writer, which I think is where the David Lee Roth comparison comes from, because he wasn't a great singer. Like,
No.
he probably would tell you that, but he was probably the greatest front man in the history of rock music, anyway. Just because when he took that stage, you saw nothing but him, which might have led to the problems between him and Eddie Van Halen, the greatest guitar player ever.
Possibly so. See, you
So
work on so many different levels. You do something that my friend Milton Berle used to call lappy humor, in that you take the humor and you put it right in the people's laps. So it's just bam, it's there, they're laughing. And then you do stuff, not head scratchy stuff, but stuff where there's maybe a half a second. Oh yeah, and then everybody's laughing hysterically at you.
yeah,
You
I mean, it's well, and what's also weird about me, well, there's several things, but my fan base is primarily younger, which you would not think a 52-year-old comic would be able to mix with, say, kids in their early 20s, because they weren't even born when I'm talking about Rat, which Milton Berle was in 2 of their videos, which is the funny thing. But I think they almost laugh not necessarily at my jokes, but at the enthusiasm that I tell them with. Like, I have a few jokes about the Village People, which I am still to this day obsessed with that band.
I know them
Because,
very well.
yeah, I mean, I know you're friends with them, but it's just like the absurdity of that band. When I was a kid, they're playing gay stereotypes, the Leatherman, Glenn Hughes was his name. Only I would know his name. David Hodo was, I think, the cowboy. And
David was the construction guy.
Okay, West, something West was the cowboy,
Yes.
and then they had a few different. Victor Willis was, I think, the original singer, but as a kid, I didn't know much about gay stereotypes, so I was like, "Why are they dressed that way? And why are there only guys in their videos?" Like, I wasn't really, and I wasn't listening to the words either. Like, if you listen to say YMCA, it's basically about I guess gay men cruising in gyms, but as a 12-year-old, I was like, "This is a great song."
It's
Like,
actually written about a specific YMCA in Manhattan. There's one on 6th Avenue and 50th Street, 49th Street. And when the song came out, a buddy of mine took me there and he goes, "We're going to go into this theme room and you're just going to sit and look." And he said, "Play the lyrics in your head. Play the lyrics in your head and just observe." And every lyric in that song applied to what my eyes were looking at. So it was
right.
about that specific place. And it was hysterical. It's like, how can people not get this? But nobody did. I mean, America didn't understand it. So they took it on face value. And then people who knew better, it was a double entendre they could dance to.
Yeah, I mean, now I get it. Obviously, 30 years later, and they're still touring. I think the Indian is still the original guy, Felipe. Uh, but I think I got into them originally because they were on the same label as Kiss, who is
Yes.
still. I'll see them in 2 weeks. It's unbelievable they're still touring. But so
Gene is not my favorite person in the world, but he's wonderful on stage.
for someone who's 70 years old, I'm impressed by. I mean, they were never about the music per se, but I'm all about the show, and they still deliver the show. Like last night, I saw Guns N' Roses, and I think Axl's got to be around 60. Slash, same thing. They put on a great show for guys their age. So, and I'm
Hey,
not far.
us baby boomers have still got it, kiddo.
Oh, I would much rather go see Guns N' Roses than some pre-produced and programmed robot early 20-year-old at the next Britney Spears. But everyone's different. I just like like last night. The business of Hollywood. Stand up is very stressful. There's a lot of things out of your control, whether it's in the music end like you are, or acting or comedy. So I go to something like Guns N' Roses last night to be entertained for 3 hours and not think about auditions, managers or agents I don't like. And I can give Guns N' Roses a thumbs up for the $300 I spent. It was actually worth every penny.
Let's talk for a minute about the comedy battle things you do. The what grew out originally of the old Friars Club roasts. That was the word I was searching for. The battle of the roasts, and you're the king of that. How did that come about?
Well, there was a weekly show at the Comedy Store. And it's probably the best example of anything I've ever gone through, where you see a show from literally day one to multiple seasons on TV. I had never been a part of something like that. And there's a very bad open mic Tuesday nights at the Comedy Store that was indie. No comics, virtually no crowd at all. And then one night, these two open mic comics were going to get into a fist fight, I think over a girl, of course. And the guy who ran the mic said, "Well, you can't fight. You'll get kicked out. Why don't you guys snap on each other," which is a term they use in the hood. Basically insult, roast each other. And they did, and it was pretty funny. And then the next week, I think the host, his name is Brian Moses, was like, "Well, instead of stand up, let's have people roast each other up here." And there's still very few people in the room. And then each week it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I started being the sidekick to Brian Moses, who is African American. And he's like, "Just say whatever you want, because we have good chemistry. which is weird because he's 20 years younger than me. So you wouldn't think that we had the same comic sensibilities. So I was doing an Archie Bunker type character, which added to the absurdity of the show because here's a black host and you have an Archie Bunker type sidekick, but it worked. It's very politically incorrect humor. And then Comedy Central and Jeff Ross got involved. And I think they said more or less to Brian Moses, hey, we love your sidekick, but we can't have that character on television. We have a thing called sponsors. That's not going to work for us. And they were like, can he roast? And I'd never really roasted before. So, and it's not my sense of humor to call someone else fat or make fun of their big nose or whatever. But it was either that or stop doing the show. So I just got into it begrudgingly, but then I was pretty good at it. I just took myself out of my body and decided to do like a pro wrestling character. And because I'm a big, gigantic pro wrestling fan.
As I am.
Day. It's just a suspension of belief. And, I've become friends with several of the big pro wrestlers, and they've been very nice. It's made me a bigger fan already than I was. And that's how I got into it. And then, it got me on the cartoon I'm on and the Showtime show I'm dying up here. But
let's tell the people about your cartoon show since you've got the little time here, please.
It's on Adult Swim and HBO Max. It's called The Jellies, and it's I'm the only white guy on it. I got the show through Roast Battle, which one night there was a young, skinny African-American male sitting in the front row, and I'm roasting him the whole show, and he's loving it. He kind of looked like I'm dating myself with this reference, but Roger from What's Happening.
He does.
I was so embarrassed by the things I was saying. I went up to him after the show and I'm like, hey, I hope you had a good time. I hope I didn't offend you too much. And he was like, you were my favorite part of the show, and I want you to be my father. And I'm like, who are you? And he looks at me and goes, I'm Tyler, the Creator. And I'm like, great. I'm Earl the Comic. Well, you know how full of I don't want to say bad words.
Oh, you can. No, you can. You can talk here freely.
Well, you know how full of shit most people are. You meet in the entertainment business, be it managers, musicians, actors, or comics. I had no idea who Tyler, the Creator was. And now I know it. And it's funny knowing now that he's the biggest urban artist / rapper in the world. He just won a Grammy, and I think what endeared me to him was I didn't know who he was, and he liked that because I've seen now working with him how much people kiss his ass because he's the guy. He's the new P. Diddy. So that was I play the dad on his cartoon, and it's he's so busy that we're not doing it anymore right now. He plays Coachella. He headlines music festivals all over the world. So a cartoon to him is probably about 12th on his priority list. Whereas with me, it's about number 1. But he's incredible. And as many bad things as I've said about Roast Battle for how I was treated, I do appreciate it for it got me on the cartoon.
Cool. What is coming up for you soon? What's the next things that we can look for you and promote you in?
Tonight and tomorrow, if someone hears this by chance, I'm at the Comedy Store in the main room both nights. So I'm at the Comedy Store a lot. It's the #1 club in the world. So I'm honored to be up there.
You're there almost every night.
At least 2 or 3 times a week, which is to the lay person might not sound like, well, there's 7 nights in a week, Earl, but to get 2 or 3 spots a week at the Comedy Store is it's like making it into the NFL or
it really
NBA is. Or my name's on the front of the wall, which is the only thing I can assimilate that to is in hockey when you win the Stanley Cup, you get your name on the trophy forever. They can never take it off. And so it's a huge honor to be at the Comedy Store. There's a few cartoons I may or may not be on. I can't say their names just because they're not out yet, and they may never happen. But doing a lot of voiceover work. So and hopefully you'll see me on TV roasting someone in a friendly way instead of the more antagonistic way.
Hey, your podcast, I've been on it and loved being on it with you. Is that still currently happening, or is that on hiatus?
Yes and no. I always my answers are like my comedy; they're kind of in the middle. As you know, during a pandemic, I prefer to do interviews face to face.
Right.
Although this is great, though. I'm amazed that this has worked so well. So I'm Team StreamYard again. But obviously during the pandemic, people are a little wary of coming to my house, which I understand. But I've done a few Zoom episodes of Inappropriate Earl, which I really loved. I think the last episode I did was with the actress Ginny Wright, who I don't know if there's ever been an actress that got off to such a good start like she did. Her first role was the lead in The World According to Garp with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And just one of the more talented actresses I've ever seen, certainly the last 30 years. And then constantly worked. Michael Mann loved her, put her in everything he did. And then she just kind of quit the business just because of the way, the way the business works, it can chew you up. And so I was really honored to have her on. Like, she lives in New York now on a goat farm. Like, she just quit the business, which is crazy. That someone so talented could just walk away from. Like, I can't ever imagine you walking away from singing or me walking away from stand-up. But
no.
So it was I almost cried during the interview because I'm such a fan of hers. But so I do some Zooms when, the problem with what we're doing now at Zoom, StreamYard, Skype is older celebrities, they're not very technologically with it, to
Right.
put it in a nice way. So when I had the bad guy from Superman 2 on, I forced him to come to my home because every question he was like, "Can we Skype?" I'm like, "No, this is pre-pandemic." He's like, "Well, can we Zoom?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Well, how do you do it?" I'm like, "I have people come to my house," and he's in his 70s, but he somehow got over to my house, and it's one of my favorite interviews because he was. If you've ever seen Superman 2, they had the 3 bad guys. Well, 1 bad girl and 2 bad. Terrence Stamp was the main bad guy. And then he was, because he's such a big guy, 6'6". You talk about a good-looking body. But his character didn't speak in the movie. He just grunted. And so I was like, that'd be a great guy to interview. Like, and he was a world heavyweight boxer. He fought George Foreman, so he was just a fantastic guest. So I really still try and get people to come over to my house, but it's tough. So I don't do as many episodes as I would like.
Well, you and I did a pretty good one. I mean, I think people loved it because where you steered me to talk about my evening with Freddie Mercury, we got a lot of feedback on that.
Well, it's probably my favorite interview I've ever done, and I'm not just saying that just because I'm talking to you right now, but I just remember we were talking about the 70s New York scene, and even though we knew each other, we didn't know a lot about each other's personal lives, and you just looked at me about midway through the interview and was like, I think you said something to the effect of, I slept with Freddie Mercury, right? And I was like, no, but we're going to talk about it for the next hour.
And we did.
Yes. But that's what made it such a great interview. You're an open book. And, I thought we were just going to talk about like Ella Fitzgerald and stuff, but and Lucille Ball, which I know you've wrote several award-winning books on both of them. But those are the kind of. No, go ahead.
No, it's a funny thing, and I don't know that you know this yet either. But I was in a relationship with someone. His name was Joel Kabik for 47 years, and nobody knew it. I met him my first day of high school. I was 13 years old, and we were together until he died 2.5 years ago. It's a very long story, and I would love to come on your show again and tell you about it. But once you've kept that kind of a secret and you unburden yourself from it, it's like, yeah, keeping secrets is baloney. Bullshit. I'd rather tell the truth and be an open book.
Well, those are the best interviews. When like that's why I've always wanted to interview like a Rose McGowan, who kept it real about Harvey Weinstein, and even though, I mean, I don't know what her mindset was, but she had to know that was going to possibly ruin her career, and she said, "F it, I'm going to talk about what this guy did to me," and so like I love interviews like that. Very few people keep it real because you're on a TV show that has sponsors, or you don't want to lose sponsors on your radio or podcast show, so you kind of gloss over the more interesting details of your life. And I think that's why I'm a frequent podcast guest, because people know I'll be honest. Like I name names, not to be sensational, but like when I was going through my, I feel like Rambo, but my own private war with Comedy Central and Jeff Ross, I spoke about how I felt, and I gave specific examples, and so I'm a frequent podcast guest because I don't know about you, but the older I've got, the more honest I've become.
Yes, so absolutely. Well, there comes a point where it's like, how much more famous do I need to be? And how much more do I have to prove? And why not just be honest, because life's too short?
Well, I just enjoy, I guess the business, I grew up in LA, Bel Air, and I didn't realize it at the time, but at my father's country club, I mean, it wasn't his country club, but he was a member at Bel Air Country Club. It was such a fascinating education in life, because up there you had pool hustlers, card sharks, billionaires who would try and screw over their friends gambling on golf and football. And it was a great forerunning to the world of stand-up. I really appreciate it now. And I have an elephant's memory, so I remember every member that was a scammer, and getting to have my dad's locker right next to Mac Davis, who's like this legendary country singer and actor, and he was a colorful guy. As a young teenager, I was so starstruck by him and others who were up there. But I saw how honest they were with each other. I mean, they did not hold back. I wish there was a TV show about the card room at Bel Air Country Club, because
gosh, yes, and the one at the Friars Club.
Oh yeah, it's very much the same vibe of once you're in that. I don't know the address of Bel Air Country Club, but once you're up behind those gates or on the Friars Club grounds, which is sad that the Beverly Hills one is now a parking lot.
Well, there's a whole story there, because that should never have happened. It didn't need to happen. People inside the club, and I won't mention names because I don't feel like having a lawsuit right now, but purposely let the club spiral down, knowing that if they did that, the club itself would have to close, bought the building for pennies on the dollar, and then knocked the building down, sold it for a parking lot, and made millions. The club was self-supporting. There was no reason for that to happen except people's avarice and greed.
Oh, I remember, this is around maybe 2004, 2005. They had comedy shows there on a Thursday
Sure,
night,
absolutely.
and, it was the hottest room in the country, which is crazy, when you consider the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, the Improv, all that stuff was around, but the Friars Club on Thursday nights, for a very brief period, because it was run by, I think, the same people you're talking about, uh, although it was fun at the time, I just remember all the people who worked there were like these beautiful women. Like they did not look like they fit in there. Like I remember the hostess was this little short brunette with the biggest chest I've ever seen in my life, and I'm like, this ain't the Friars Club I grew up watching on TV. But I certainly don't mind her. I think the girls were all like prostitutes who worked there. No, I'm not.
No,
I'm not
that what
kidding.
what they were trying to do, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Friars Club is and was a private club. You had to be a known member of show business to even walk in the door. You had to be sponsored by somebody who was a star to join. It had some of the best food Los Angeles had to offer. Their Sunday brunch was out of this world. And you could eat dinner, you could have lunch. It had a fine bar for those who like to drink. It had card rooms for those who like to play. And the George Burns Groucho Marx Memorial Smoking Room and Library, where if you went in there and you smoked, the smoke rose up like this. Now, I have COPD. I could go in there and smoke a cigar and not cough because before the smoke got from a cigar to my mouth, it was already over my head.
Right.
I had a wonderful time being a member there, but they were trying to get, in those days, I was one of the younger people they were trying to get. So they made sure they had, prettier, wittier, tittier women there to attract the younger men
They got
and some good-looking Latinos because they began allowing women to be guests and members. And there were no, there weren't. I was the only openly gay man there. Um, I don't know how many organizations I've been a member of where I was the first openly gay member. I don't know why people hide that, but
I think now they don't as much. Like, I mean, right now the hot, I don't know if I'd say hot topic, but the hot area for stand-ups is, there's a lot of trans comics now, and it's just, it's. I mean, they are normal, but 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd be like, wow, I don't know if I want to be on a lineup with them. I'm not saying that's how I'll
no,
form.
no,
I'll form.
I will vouch for your equal opportunityness.
But now it's, oh, you're trans, great. Do you want to go next? I think so. Being gay now is almost like telling someone you're straight. They're like, okay, great,
A
big deal.
million years ago, a million years ago, in the 1970s, I worked at the Playboy Club. There were two rooms, and this is the Playboy Club in New York. There was Laney's room, named for Laney Kazan. That's where Laney would sing. Major comedians, major singers played there, and Professor Irwin Corey was the opening act. So I got to know Irwin really well. And then I was in a part of a tab show put on by Peter Jackson, not the movie director, but the nightclub producer. That was topless, almost bottomless, and was based on Parisian cabaret shows. And one of the girls in the show, one of the showgirls in the show, was a girl named Nikki who was trans. You could not tell by looking at her, other than she was 6 feet tall, the most beautiful breasts I've ever seen, the most beautiful butt on a girl I've ever seen. She had not yet had the final operation, but had taken so many hormones that in a G string, I could not see the bulge of genitalia. I don't know how she did that. But the man who did her breasts had done something wrong and they used to leak. And you'd be sitting with her, and all the girls were topless, putting on their makeup and jabbering and drinking coffee. And she'd go, oh, and she would grab a makeup towel and just express this liquid out of her breast that would come out of a nipple, like it was milk, but it wasn't milk. It was the saline in her breasts leaking out. And Hugh Hefner in those days had a thing that if he found out that any of the girls were hooking or weren't biological females, they'd be fired. And I didn't do it, but somebody ratted Nikki out and she got fired. Meanwhile, the rest of the girls on the show, practically all of them, were hooking. What they would do is they'd pay off the bunny mother. The bunny mother was the woman in charge of the Playboy bunnies. And they had the hutch upstairs where their costumes were in a dressing room and a lounge to relax. And they'd pay her off to use the lounge to turn tricks. And the girls in our show had really expensive Ferragamo raincoats. And they'd go down to the disco and with just the raincoats and high heels and bring men upstairs and make fortunes. And the bunny mother was making like $20,000 a month from this. Hef looked the other way at that, but he wouldn't tolerate Nikki.
I mean, I think he probably just didn't. I mean, I can't speak for him, but I would guess he just didn't understand that world. And
well, this was the 1970s. I was still a teenager doing all of this. I wasn't even 20 years old yet.
But, I mean, it is amazing how times have changed. You know, like I said, the White Shadow back then was it was almost a taboo television show, which is probably why it only lasted 3 seasons, because it was just.
Did you know that they built an entire episode around Ella Fitzgerald on that show?
They did. I remember because you know, I think someone was like, "Hey, we need to lighten up the mood here a little bit. We're going into." You know, because it was still to this day a very tough show to categorize. Is this a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it both?
Well, in those days, most comedies were still being done in front of a live audience, or they had a laugh track, and the dramas were a separate thing, filmed like a movie, you know, with film, but one camera. Where most of the comedies were done with 3 cameras. This was done with 1 camera, played for laughs, but there was no laugh track, no audience. You're absolutely right. It was very hard to categorize. And just 1 week, most of the cast was not in it. They picked one guy from the cast, built a show around him, driving Ella Fitzgerald around L.A., Ella was not playing herself, but she was playing a character like herself. A former big band singer with Chick Webb, which Ella was, who has come to town to bury an old friend of hers. And Ella sings in the show, and it won awards. It was like, who would think this kind of a thing would be on the kind of show you were describing? And it worked.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have 2 favorite, and they definitely influenced my comedy to this day. Episodes of one is the All in the Family episode where Sammy Davis visits Archie Bunker's house, and that 9-minute clip from when he goes into the house to when he kisses Archie on the cheek and leaves. I think it's the greatest 9 minutes of sitcom writing history. I mean, it's a master class, especially when you consider the time frame. You know, that was probably 74, 75.
Oh, not even earlier than that.
Or I mean 72 maybe. It was a
and
very
there's not a wasted word, there's not a wasted comma. Every single thing written was perfect for the situation. The actors were spot on, and Sammy, who could have not been spot on because he was doing a lot of drugs in those days, but he was in the moment right there. There's dialogue between Sammy and Archie Bunker. You know, I don't understand why people think I'm prejudiced. You know, I don't think I'm better than other people. And Sammy says, you know, I can guarantee, Archie, you're not better than anybody.
Yeah. I mean, just facial expressions. Like, it was so perfect. Like when Sammy Davis took a drink and he gave the glass to Archie, and Archie went to put it to his lips, and he just kind of looked at it like, I can't drink out of the same glass as a black man. But it was perfect. And the White Shadow had a very similar episode where the coach takes 3 players to this racist country club, which, you know, I won't name country clubs, but they nailed it with the the situations that they showed at that country club. It was just very much like the Sammy Davis episode, and I guess that meant a lot to me because I grew up playing country club golf, and I don't know about today, but back then it was like I remember like why aren't there more minorities up here? Why are the women? I mean, I think women could literally play golf at Bel Air. Now, this is in the 70s. I'm sure it's different now with Gloria Allred types going, no, this is going to change. But I think in the 70s and early 80s, Women's Day at Bel Air was literally Friday morning from 9 to noon. That's the only time they could play golf.
No, we're talking about a time where Jews were still having trouble with country clubs in Los Angeles.
Oh, I remember asking my dad, Dad, I don't know why I asked the question, but I was like, Dad, are there any Jewish members here? He's like, one, and he doesn't admit it. Because my dad should have been a comic, but they have, at the time, I think they got so angry at their lack of inclusion at country clubs that they made their own country club. I think it's Hillcrest.
Hillcrest. Yeah, Hillcrest.
Heavily Jewish, if not completely.
Well, the story is, of course, that there were these country clubs in Los Angeles that would not allow Jews to play tennis or golf or eat. That's where the famous line about Groucho Marx, because his children were only half Jewish. Well, can they go into the pool up to their knees? They're only half Jewish.
Right.
So they started Hillcrest, but they would not make it exclusive. Hillcrest, you could be Jewish, you could be anything. It's okay if you're not Jewish, you're welcome, but we want to make sure any Jew who can afford it can come in. And the men who started Hillcrest, of course, with country clubs, some country clubs, I don't know if Bel Air is the same. If you're a member, you actually own a piece of the land. You are
Right.
It's like being in a co-op. You're kind of all owners of the place. And 4 or 5 years after Hillcrest opened, they found oil on the land, and everybody who was an original member became a millionaire from the oil.
Yeah, I mean
which was God going, nyuk, 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 nyuk.
Yeah. It's funny you just did that. That was another one of my comedy influences, was the early Three Stooges. Just only the ones with Curly. No offense to Shemp, I never got into him. He was great, but Curly was so, especially the early versions of Curly. I just loved Mo and the mean-spirited humor, but it was funny and so over the top. You couldn't believe that Mo Howard was actually like that. I don't mind. That's why I don't mind my age. I grew up like kids today who are teenagers now, and I look at the TV shows they're growing up with, and I win. It's all real. And I watch all the reality shows, Big Brother and Love Island and all that garbage. But I can't imagine in 20 or 30 years kids are going to look back fondly on Love Island.
I don't think they're going to look back at all. Young people today seem to have no sense of history and also no desire to have any history. It's all and only about what's happening in this minute. And it's a new minute now. Forget that. Now this is the new thing. My kids and grandchildren know I Love Lucy because I'm Geoffrey Mark, but they don't know anything about 50s, 60s, 70s TV they know the Beatles, but they don't know other 60s music. My grandsons couldn't care less about any of it. They really couldn't care less about my career. I'm Papa. That's what they know. But what I do, or, if they happen to be free, if I'm singing or I'm doing stand-up, they'll come see me for 10 minutes. Hey, hi, Papa, and leave. But they're not impressed. It's a different world. When I was young growing up, the history of show business was so important to me. And the history of culture that came before me was so important to me. And so influenced me. It may be who I am and the kind of guy who's still working in show business almost 50 years later. We should probably take a minute to say that our host, Gary Allen, has been watching and is loving the show and loving you, Earl. Hi, Gary. Please feel better.
Hello, Gary.
We should also mention that my second guest, Shawn Michaels, for the second time, has not shown up. So I wish Shawn well. He's a very nice man. He's a wonderful adult film actor and producer. And yeah, we're never going to have him back. So Shawn, we love you, wish you well, but we can't count on you, boy. Sorry, I didn't mean boy, guy. And because he's African American, I don't want to think I'm slurring him. But Earl has been kind enough. There is a way we can chat with each other by typing. So he's agreed to stay the whole hour. So Earl, you're my hero. Thank you for that. And now let's continue.
Well, it's one of the benefits of stand-up comedy. You have a lot of time in the daytime to be the backup guest if need be. So, well, yeah.
I told our producer Tom, if none of them show up, I'm going to sing for an hour. I'm prepared one way or another to fill an hour. So I'm glad you're with me.
It's an honor. It took us a few times to do this, but people got sick or technical difficulties. But well, I think that what we were talking about is I think kids today are bored by what we saw. Like if I were to show, if I took like tonight, I'll go to the Comedy Store. It'll be a young crowd. If I said, "Hey guys, we're all going to my house to watch an episode of The White Shadow," I would guess they would leave my house after about a half hour. They'd be like, "Okay, where are the explosions? Where's the CGI? Where's Vin Diesel flying through a building?" So I feel and sound old saying this because I remember my parents used to tell me how wild Elvis was and that the camera couldn't show us from the waist down because he was gyrating. And my mom's telling me this as Tawny Katane is in a Rat video doing the splits on a Jaguar, which basically is showing her nether region. I was like, Elvis wasn't anywhere near this raunchy. So now I find when I show people, I showed my fiance the Stallone movie Cobra, which I'm obsessed with. But it's 1986. Wasn't a lot of special effects. It was actually the first script for Beverly Hills Cop, which Stallone made into a more violent version so he could do it. Even Stallone said, "I'm not funny. This isn't going to work. We need to make it violent." And they did. But my fiance is 28, so she's used to like Fast and Furious and
right.
All those wacky movies with the CGI. Like we went to go see Creed 2 because I love Stallone. I mean, Cobra, Nighthawks. He's way more than just Rocky and Rambo.
Yes, he is.
But she loved Creed 2. I hated it because it's just a different generation of Creed 2. To me, it just looked like a video game.
Yes.
You had this huge Russian who just looked like right out of Central Casting. But Mike Creed is, Dolph Lundgren being the Russian who could. He was obviously a beautiful man and a great body, but he actually thought he was a Russian. So I just. But if you showed someone Rocky 4, which is a loose prequel to Creed 2, I guess. So someone who's a teenager or early 20s now, they'd be, "Oh, that movie sucks." So it's just.
You mentioned a couple of things. I wanted to ask you as an actor. So this is an acting question. I know you are engaged to a lovely young lady, but let's assume for half a second you weren't engaged right now.
Sure.
Would you ever do a film that required you to be nude? And would you ever have considered doing adult videos if it had been offered to you?
No, because I would do a nude scene. If it was in good taste. Like was in the Showtime show I'm Dying Up Here, which is based around 70s stand-up.
Right.
Now, it's funny you bring that question up.
I was hoping it would be.
I was very well liked by the writers and the producers, but there just wasn't a lot of. I was a secondary character. I mean, I was in it enough to say I was in it, but barely. And around the end of the second season, now this is at the height of the Me Too stuff. The Weinstein stuff was really just coming to a peak. The main writer says, "Earl, we love you. We want to get you more screen time. I wrote a scene for you where the lead actress, secondary lead actress, Ari Grainer is her name. She played the young blonde pie in the sky stand up. She's so desperate she sleeps with you." Because in the show I played the bitter late night comic, and you've been around comedy clubs. Like, there is that one bitter late night comic who just does the same set, never writes anything new, just bitches about his lack of success, and was my role. And the writers, like, we took it to the network, and you were going to have a hookup scene. I don't know if it would have been a full sex scene, but the network was like, yeah, we don't want her getting passed around like that, so we had to cut the scene. And that might have been my nude scene you talk about. I would have done it, absolutely. But in terms of adult films, people might not get this from this interview or any interview I've done. I'm always thinking long term. Like, what if I do a move today? What are the consequences in 2 weeks, 2 months, a year from now?
That's why you're still in this business 20 years out.
Yeah. I mean, I could do a raunchy joke right now. I certainly have a few of them. But, in today's world of Twitter, and it's primarily just Twitter, you can be hung out to dry in 2 minutes. I think adult films, I'm sure the money's great. I have several friends, mostly female, who do it, and they make their living off of it. But I think once you go into that world, you never get out of it. I would never be a stand-up comic again. It'd be like, oh, that's the guy who did porn, and now he's up here doing jokes. Like, I'm a stand-up first and foremost, and I don't even consider myself an actor, because even in I'm Dying Up Here, they really didn't even give me lines. They were like, just be you. We saw you at the Comedy Store late night. That's why we wanted you. We like, this guy's perfect to play Al. Al Sims was the role. Just do what you would do your act, but switch out the Bon Jovi joke and make it a Buddy Hackett line or something like that. So I was just literally doing my material from today and switching in instead of talking about Stormy Daniels, I would plug in Phyllis Diller. And some of it actually got on television. So, I'm fascinated by the world of adult films, but oddly enough, I've never, I mean, obviously I've watched some, but it doesn't do anything for me. So I can't imagine acting would. Sure, it'd be great to have sex with a hot, 36 double D or whatever, but it's just not. Porn's not for me. Like, I don't like watching it.
Okay, I'm getting the idea. It's not for you. Hey, I cannot believe we're getting almost to the close of the show. You saved my ass. Thank you so much. I want to be on your show again. Folks who don't know, you live in Los Angeles. I live in Palm Springs. But September, October, invite me in. I'll come do your show live with you at your house.
Oh, please.
I would love to. All you have to do is just, give me a week's notice and a date. I'll be there. Let folks know how they can find you. How can they get in touch with you, your fans?
It's very easy. I'm boring from the standpoint of my social media handle is the same for everything. It's just my name, at Earl Skakel. That's EARL SKAKEL. If you ever want to come to the Comedy Store, or the Improv, or hell, I might even have a Laugh Factory spot. Just DM me, as the kids say on Instagram, and I'll take care of it. And then, of course, Inappropriate Earl, the podcast. Check out the Geoffrey Mark interview. It's literally one of my probably 2 or 3 favorite ones I've ever done. I think the only others that compare to it is the one I had with Barry Katz, the very famous comedy manager. And then there's a couple other stand-up related that I enjoy. But people always ask, and I know we got to wrap it up, but people ask me what my podcast is about, because most have a theme. Mine really doesn't. I'll interview Geoffrey Mark, the singer, actor. I'll interview the next week Stephen Pearcy, the singer from Rat. The next week, Jack O'Halloran from Superman 2. Pretty much anyone who will come to my house. So,
well, let's make that happen for us again. It's been a couple of years or more. It's time for another episode. You know, I am so proud, son, of what you have accomplished. It is such a pleasure to watch you rise and be who you're becoming. And there's still so much more ahead for you. I love you. You know that. I am proud of you. And it is a pleasure being a little part of your life. Gary is thanking us both. We thank you, Gary. Feel better. As my late partner used to say, Lord willing and the creek don't rise. I'll be back next week. I don't know who my guests will be. Hopefully, at least one of them will show up. Otherwise, you're going to hear a concert from Geoffrey Mark. Earl, I love you, boy. Thank you so, so much.
Gary, thank you. Get better. And Geoffrey, you know I hold you in the highest esteem. I always follow your exploits, whether it be Lucille Ball books, Ella Fitzgerald books, your singing performances. And I'm as big a fan of yours as you are of mine. And you know, I find the good people in the entertainment business, you find each other and you got to stick with each other, because there's very few good people in this business.
And you are one of them.
All right.
Peace.
I love you, bud.
I love you too, boy. All right. That's the end of our show. Wow, this went by fast. I've always wanted to interview Earl. I'm so glad we got a chance to do it. This is Mainstreet. We'll be back next week with another new show for you. And after that, Gary Allen will be back as your host. Until then, as I always say, God bless and have a happy.